weeks. After 3 weeks, they was teaching something the child couldn't understand. Something's wrong with the child. Something's wrong with the child. And most of the time, by the way, there's this there is this game that parents and educators play. It's in some places the parents bring the child to the teacher and says, hey, take this children, please fix it. Please fix the child for me. Give it to me back when it's already fixed. Or some situations, some systems, they do exactly the opposite. They go to parents and say, hey, your child has a problem. You deal with that problem. It's not our problem. Now, the truth is that first, I want you to know that children are not broken. They don't need to be fixed. And we need to take mutual responsibility. You know, my children, the children that I work with, they are my children. It's my responsibility. There's a beautiful rule that I learned, and I had amazing mentors that told me, if you couldn't get a kid to do something, it's only because you haven't found a solution yet. Do you understand how big this is? I was teaching something, and then 3 weeks passed, 6 weeks passed, 8 weeks passed, and didn't get it. Instead of me saying something's wrong with the kid, I'm saying it only means I haven't found a way yet. There is a way. You know, sometimes when you're frustrated, I know, I do that too. Sometimes when you're frustrated as an educator, you just say, look, I've tried everything. No, you did not. As long as you're alive, you did not try everything. If you're awake and you're alive, you haven't tried everything. I know, I do that too. Sometimes I feel so frustrated and I say, look, I've tried everything. But it's never true. There's always a way. Always a way. You do something, it doesn't work, you do it differently. Now, I want to go, again, if you have any questions, come back, ask it, and so on. Now, if you look, this is a model that Goldman shared, and some people who like wordings, the previous one is easier. Some people who like pictures, easy for them to remember, they can look at this graph, which will make it easy for them. Now you can understand that there is recognizing and there is managing. There is recognizing me and managing it. There is recognizing others and helping them to manage it. So there are two dimensions that we're dealing with. One is self, one is other. One is recognizing what is happening, and the second one is regulating what is happening. Okay? Do you have any questions? Please ask. And I promise to answer. Okay? Now, I want to explain why the children that I worked with were able to learn amazing things in a very short time, and I think your children can do exactly the same way. Now, think about it this way. We have 3 parts of the brain. The first part, this is the animal part of the brain. This one is at the bottom, and we call it the primitive brain. This is where you could see the snake. It's the snake brain. Why? Because in this part of the brain, we can do only 3 things. They're called the 3 Fs. It is fight, flight, freeze. That's all we can do. Fight, flight, freeze. Now, I want you to know something. In this part of the brain, for example, where in nature, sometimes people say, okay, if I'm not going to move, I'm going to pretend dead. Maybe the lion is not going to see me. But the truth is that freeze is a really, really bad situation to be in our society at the moment. Now, a lot of the children that you work with are in a freeze state. They can't function at all. They cannot think at all. They're in freeze state. The second part of the brain is what we call the limbic brain. This is a part of the brain, we call it the puppy brain, because this is the part where we have a lot of emotions, a lot of connections. We call it the puppy brain because I want you to imagine the primitive brain does this dangerous sound. The puppy brain, imagine that he's always going with his tail, ding, 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 very, very happy with his tail. This is a big part. This is how we breathe. We do it. By the way, I'm talking to you, but you don't see me, do you?
We can.
Oh, you can see. You see me?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, good.
We can we can activate a few screens, including yours.
Okay.
Your
Can you
screen.
include me because I want to show them something?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes. Everybody has to set it up on their own screen.
Yeah. Can you see me? Please put your screen in such a way that you can see my face. Okay. Now, when we are upset, when we are in a primitive brain, the body does this thing. We breathe like this. We all do that. We don't have any control of it. It's just like this is the scared position. Even if we don't feel it, it's basically very, very fast and shallow. Now, when you take a deep breath, the brain thinks that you're not under attack. So when you do this, basically the brain, it's a key. It's a key that takes you out of the primitive brain. It basically sends a message that says, Ronit is not going to die now. No one's going to eat her now. The snake is not a real threat. And mommy that is talking to me is not a dinosaur that's going to eat me. So breathing is a wonderful technique. So staying in the breathing for about 30 seconds or 1 minute will take people out of the primitive brain really, really fast. So, by the way, any form of breathing works really, really well. Now, a wonderful technique with children is to, I'm actually going to teach you a technique. It's a really, really beautiful technique. And I'm sorry, I don't have a slide for that thing because I didn't plan to include that one. It's actually called the popcorn technique. Okay, the popcorn technique is a technique. It was invented by a psychologist that whenever he realized that his clients are really, really going really, really down, they were really, really, oh, no, that's really bad. What's happening in here? He used to distract them for a split of a second, and he would say things like, did you smell popcorn? And then he would go back. He would go back to them and say, yeah, and then they'll continue talking. Now, the thing is this. If you work with children, it's much easier to do it with children. By the way, if you're doing that technique, you never use the same thing again and again. You don't say popcorn more than once. You say, once you say popcorn, once you say, oh, did the phone ring? Or, anything.
Is that like a diversion technique?
It is, but it's a very, very split of a second. It needs to be very, very short. Now, the amazing bit about the popcorn technique is that you can actually ask children questions. Now, the question that you ask will force them to go into the thinking brain. So in order for them to answer the question, they need to leave the primitive brain, go and bring the answer, and then come back. So I'll give you an example. When you're doing the breathing, if you teach the children a pattern of breathing, they will have to leave the primitive brain, go into the calculating brain. For example, don't know if you know, there is a yoga technique that's very, very successful, very, very effective. It's called the 4-7-8. 4-7-8 means you inhale to the count of 4, you hold to the count of 7, and you exhale to the count of 8. Now, the truth is that if you have younger kids, You can do 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, whatever. It doesn't matter. The thing is this, because they have to count, they cannot be in the primitive brain. They have to count. So counting. So this is what I would do when I had the 2-year-old, the 3-year-old. I would tell them to do this breathing. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. That's it. Just to count 1, 2, 3 is enough, because they cannot do that in the primitive brain. You cannot try it. You cannot be upset and count exactly
Very
at
clever.
the same time. Yeah. Now, if it's 1, 2, 3, maybe a bit easier to be upset. But if it's 2, 2, 2, if it's 1, 2, 3, it's much harder, because you need to keep the pattern. But keeping the pattern is done in the thinking brain. So you cannot afford, you have to leave this place. Now, the popcorn questions are really, really wonderful questions, because the person needs to go in his mind to the memory of what happened and bring the answer. For example, if a kid comes and he says, oh, by the way, I'm sure you've heard that one. He doesn't want to play with me. Devastating. That's the end of the world. He said he's not my friend anymore. And you can see that the child is very, very upset. He's in the primitive brain. He's crying, or he's angry. He's sometimes throwing things and so on. Now, instead of being angry with him, don't be angry. The second you're angry with him, you become the lion.
Very, very important.
You become the lion. Yes, yeah. You become the lion. If a child has a tantrum, that means he is in the primitive brain. The second you are angry, you are the lion. It doesn't go to take him out of the primitive brain. So be relaxed and ask questions about what happened. Who said that to you? What did he say? Were you in the playground when he said that? Were there other kids in that place? Now, do you understand that to answer each and one of those questions, the child needs to leave the primitive brain, go and search the event, and bring you an answer. That's why this is why he cannot stay in the primitive brain. Now, for us as an adults, we need to recognize that this is what's happening to us. And we need to take a deep breath. We need to think about something else. We need to distract ourselves. We need to go and do something else, write something, draw something, cook, something to calm yourself down, and do something that you need to think. Because thinking takes you out of the primitive brain. Something that you need to pay attention to takes you out of the primitive brain. Okay? For example, if children, you give them a piece of paper, where's Wally? If you just sit with, yeah. So if you just give them this thing and you just say, okay, let's just find out where's Wally.
Gak bisa. Ini lagi silent.
That's really
It's okay. Then they need to leave the primitive brain in order to find Wally. So it's a good idea to distract them. Now, another thing that works really, really well is touch. Now, the touch needs to be a brief touch. It doesn't have to be leaving the hand over there. It can be just touching for a split of a second and leaving. Why? Because the brain is going to have to process what just happened. So if a child is very, very upset and you just touch him slightly and then you leave your hand, then the brain needs to leave the primitive brain, go into probably go into the puppy brain and say, yes, and say, oh, what was that? What was the sensation about? And then he'd say, oh, okay, just someone touched me. But this split of a second that they left the primitive brain is enough not for things to get out of proportion. Okay? Was there any other questions about that thing? You had 2 questions. What was the other one?
Oh, it's it's along the line as the other question.
As the previous one. Okay.
Yes. So basically, how to train the child, or how to train the child to be able to activate their puppy brain if they are still stuck in the primitive brain. Yes. So I think they are
good.
sort of
soon I'll have another one for you. Okay. Now,
Okay.
I want to explain several concepts, and I know that there are people who in this webinar that are obviously highly interested in the children, the Asperger's children or the children with autism, and this is very, very relevant for those children. Now, there's a researcher's name Ekman, and Ekman went and what he did is he researched facial expressions and how people express themselves and how does it look on their face and so on. Now, if you see the picture in front of you, this is the picture of how communication works. Okay. Now I'm going to talk to you today, and I promise you that you're not going to remember everything I said to you. Why? Because you're human. Okay. You're going to remember more my tone of voice. You're going to remember my accent. Everyone's going to remember that I have an accent. You're going to remember the things that I have at the back, things at the back. You're going to remember some of the pictures that you have on the slideshow, but you're not going to remember everything that I said. Why? Because in every communication, only 5% of my words are meaningful. All the rest is going into the way I move my hands and the way I move my body and so on, and the rest is the tone of the voice and the pitch and all those things. Now, Ekman found that we have 10,000 facial expressions, and only 3,000 of them relate to emotions, and we have in our face about 43 muscles that comes in different combination, and every combination of it means happy, means confused, means frustrated, means in love, and so on. Okay. Now, most people in the world can read all this thing intuitively without even thinking about it. We all do that. We don't know that we're doing it, but we're doing it. Okay. Now, we can even detect when someone is saying something and there is a contradiction between a word and a facial expression. And I'm going to share with you an example. I hope you're all looking at me now. Okay. Everyone who is now, please look at me, because you're going to read my facial expressions. Okay. So let's say we had an argument, and then I said to you, and you said to me, "Oh, Ronit, what's wrong?" And I just say, "Listen to me." I was saying, "No, that's fine. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay." Do you think I'm okay? No, definitely not. I said I'm okay.
But you're not.
Exactly. My body language didn't say that I'm okay. My facial expression didn't say that. Even my tone of the voice was, "I'm definitely not okay." Now, the problem that children with Asperger's have is that most of what they get is on the 7%. A lot of the tone of the voice and a lot of the body language, they cannot read that exactly the same as regular people. So for them, the 38 and the 55, they just don't get much of it. So in communication, they lack a lot of information. Now, they spend a lot of their days in the primitive brain because it's just very, very hard. It's very confusing. It's almost like you look at this and you say, well, what did happen here? Now, I want to explain to you a concept. It's called Neuro Mirroring. And this explains really, really well why it's very, very important for us as educators, as parents, to take care of ourselves. And why with children with autism, we need to do that even more. Okay? Now, Many years ago, they researched mirroring, and they basically were checking monkeys. And what they did is that they would stimulate the monkey, and then they wanted to check which area of the brain lights up. One day, a guy from the lab went and bought an ice cream. He came back, and everyone said, hey, the monkey just sits there, but he has readings in areas of the brain, but he's doing nothing. And then one guy said, hey, he's actually looking at the guy eating an ice cream. How about we'll put the same machine on the guy eating an ice cream? And this is what they found out. When we look at someone, and this person is experiencing something, then those areas of his brain lights up. When we look at that person, exactly the same areas of our brain lights up in a mirror way. So if I look at Grace and she's very upset because I don't even know why, then I'm actually very upset as well. Now, the only part that is not involved is the part that's connected to touch. So if, let's say, you burned your hand and you did this, then I look at you and I feel like, oh, exactly the same way, just my brain doesn't send soldiers to fix the wound because the touch didn't happen to me. So it doesn't say, oh, okay, Ronit just burned her hand, we need to go and fix it. But all the feelings that you experience, I experience exactly the same way. Now, children are born with a mirroring capacity to the max. They mirror mostly mom, because they mirror the person that they spend most of the time with. Everything your children know is because they mirrored you. It's a chemical thing that happens between two people. Now, autistic children, they need an agent. They still mirror. I want you to know they still mirror. They still mirror. By the way, if you want to read more about neuro mirroring, you can go into my website. There's a website. It's called ronitbarras.com. It's RONITBARAS.com. And just Google mirroring or neuro mirroring, and then you'll see an article there. There is a TED talk about mirroring that is just amazing. You have to look at it. If you look at it, you understand exactly what I'm talking about. Now, children mirror really, really well. However, autistic children or children on the spectrum or children with Asperger's, they need more agents than regular children. And I'll tell you what I mean. They still mirror you. They just don't know what to do with that. So, as a parent, as an educator, it's very, very important for you to say exactly what you have in your mind. Now, I don't know how old you are, everyone who's watching. Have you seen the movie MacGyver? Do you remember MacGyver? Now, we had jokes about MacGyver that he walks and his thoughts, he basically he basically narrates his thoughts all the time. Oh, if I'll do this one, maybe if I'll take this one and I'll combine it with this one, this will make a bomb. And now, when you are with children that have Asperger's or Down syndrome, you need to be MacGyver of emotions. Why? Because this is how they will learn it better. Why? Remember that picture that you have in front of you. They depend 100% on the 7%. The words are so important for them that I don't know if you've met people with Asperger's or some of you maybe not, or some of you yes, but let's say you have an adult with high functional ones, you can be very upset next to him and he looks at you and you said, what you can cry, and then they say, what happened? I was like, what? I mean, I've been crying now. I mean, you can see I'm sad. No. No, you cannot see you're sad. You need to say, I am sad now. I am happy now. This is the only way to teach them feelings. They don't have names for them. They don't know what that means. But if you teach them, you'd say, you come home and instead of feeling your feelings, next to them, you speak your feelings. You say, this is what happened to me at work today. I was so upset. I did this thing at work and my boss was annoying and I was very unhappy with what he said to me. He was very loud. I didn't like that. Then he's basically learning to look at your face, taking the words, he creates a connection. Magic. Magic. I worked with a child. I live in Brisbane. Melbourne is far away from here. I worked with a child that I only worked with his mum. She brought me an assessment that he was done, definitely autism and so on. And she said to me, Ronit, I want to get rid of it before he goes to school. So nothing will be written on his report that he goes to school that he is autistic. And I said to her, you need to do the MacGyver thing. Because every time you say it, he learns it. Where other children, they just get it. Their mirroring capacity is so big and so strong that they don't need this agent that much. I mean, the truth is that it's healthy for everyone to create that connection. Now, my suggestion is don't do it only on negative feelings. Do it on positive feelings as well. You come home and you say, I am so excited about this thing. This is, you teach them. They learn to read your face and your words and they put it together. They cannot do it without an agent. They need someone to do it. And if you're angry, you're just angry all the time because they're frustrated, then they can get anything from it. It's better to sound very, very upset than to say and to scream or punish or anything like that. Do you have any questions for me?
Yes. Now, are you saying by using words, we can assume that the Asperger's or the autism in the spectrum, those in the spectrum actually have sufficient understanding?
No, I'm actually saying that you have to say it again and again and again and again and again until this child creates a connection between happy and this is the way your face looks like.
Okay, so repetition, you mean? So
yes, you need to create that. Yes, you need to connect between this is my face, those are my muscles. I mean, you don't say this are my muscles. You just say this is how I look, and this is the feeling that I have: upset, angry, and you do it enough times. Now, for example, to all the team that works together, it is wonderful if you all do that. Why? Because children that hear the same thing from different faces, that creates the connection in the brain between happy. Now, you know that all those autistic children, all those people with Asperger's, they cannot read faces. They cannot read faces. Why? Because the connection between the face and the name of that emotion it doesn't happen naturally for them. They just don't do it naturally. By the way, I want you to know you don't have to be autistic or you don't have to be with Asperger's. I work with a lot of children that are just angry children. They're just angry children. And they cannot do that because there's so much in the primitive brain. They cannot read facial expressions very well. Now, the better we read facial expressions, by the way, I wrote at the top of it. Do you see that I wrote at the top, Lie to Me? Lie to Me is a movie. It's a series. You can see it on the TV about Paul Ekman's research.